Need more of my bats, please.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you. Hello there, and welcome into the studio. We're very well prepared this morning and organized, and there's no problems at all going on, so that's a good thing. Okay, we're gonna be doing some soup mugs today. Here's a soup mug. This is what we're going to be working on. This is the finished size. Obviously, when we make them, they're much bigger because you have to account for the clay shrinkage. I always think about that when you're making any functional object, especially if you want it to hold a certain amount. The math isn't that hard to do. My clay shrinks about 14%. So you just do the math. Let's see, what do I do? You take the finished size that you want and then divide that by 0.86 because you're taking out the 14%. You should get what you want to make it at. Anyways, these are the soup mugs. Nice hefty bowl. So we have like a flared rim on here. Okay. And one thing that I kind of like about how it comes out and then back in, you have this little bit of a lip right here for your soups and things like that. So you'll scoop it and then it'll kind of push it back onto there. If this was just like flared out, just like that, when you're putting your soup on there, sometimes it can be more apt to kind of spill out. These are great for, especially if you have kids and things like that. And you can accentuate this into a smaller bowl too. For kids that are starting to learn to use their utensils, it'll help when they put their spoon or fork into here to keep the food back onto there as opposed to spilling it completely out. These wrap around your hands pretty nice with this form. It's fairly large and have a nice handle on here. It's very functional. It's nice and wide. With a form this size, if I had like a handle just half that width, it would be far too skinny as far as proportions go. So try to make it a little bit wider. You need to get more of a grip on there if we're holding something with this much weight on there once it's all filled up. Don't limit yourself to soup in these. You can fill it with ice cream if you want. There's nothing wrong with filling the entire thing with ice cream, so you can do that. This one's glazed in northern birch. Hopefully we'll be making some more so that we can get our website updated. We do have some for sale in the gallery right now. We are going to be using, let's see, 1.5 pounds of clay. I like to use this bat system. So round things, square cutouts, just attach this to your wheel head. Sometimes these get a little warped over the years, but that's okay. And then these little bats just sit right inside of here. These fit the bottoms of my soup mugs really well. A little pry bar to pop it out if you have to. If I make this on a large bat, I want to make 20, 30 of them at a time. If I throw it on a big bat, it's going to take up my entire studio space because of all that extra room that the bats have. So these little things are nice. What do we have for tools here? We have our pry bar for getting this out. Sometimes it can be a little stuck in there. We just have our regular old wooden knife. Throwing sponge, makeup finishing sponge. We talked about these before. These are the large wedge ones. You can get them at the pharmacy or order them online. Very smooth. I like the angles that it has, especially with these soup mugs. We'll be drying when they're in there. They'll be getting these lines put into there that kind of catch and break with the glaze. And these sponges can kind of clean inside of those sharp points really well. And then good for finishing rims. And then we just have one rib today. It's just like a kidney shaped rib. Let's see, this one's Kemper. It's really old. It's rather flexible. This is what we'll be using to put the shape in and compressing the bottom. So I believe that's all the things that we need. We have our pointer here set up. So for the very first one, we'll get all of our measurements set up, and then we'll put that at the rim. So that's measuring our height and our diameter. And then every one after that, we can just throw right to there. Don't have to sit there and measure each one every single time. And I've got a ruler. So it just kind of, it speeds up the whole process as far as making identical things. Oftentimes people want to buy these in groups, and for for the most part, they don't want them with large height differences or width differences, like a nice set. With this pointer, you're really going to help hone your throwing skills. You're going to be throwing to the same point every single time. It's a nice exercise. It can get in the way, especially for smaller pots, as far as like trying to center it and things like that. It can be a little bit, you have to change your hand position sometimes a little bit, but that's something you'll get used to. It's a good exercise, speeds things up. If your clay can do it one time, it can do it again. So that's nice to know that it should always be able to go there. Let's do it. So this will be hopefully more quantity throwing pieces today. I don't know if I'll get them all done during the live video, but I throw these, so I have 24 of these, so I throw 24 at a time. And then I also know in my kiln that takes up 4 shelves, so it all works out pretty well. And if you see me tapping over here, someone had said something about that before. You know, I throw standing up, and I don't have my foot pedal, you know, as far as controlling the speed of the wheel. I don't have that on the floor. Otherwise, I'd be standing on one leg, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of trying to stand up and support your back a little bit more. If you're standing on one leg, you're out of balance. So I just have this sitting over here, and I control it with my hand. That's something that takes a little bit getting used to, because you don't have the capability of changing your wheel speed while you're working. You have to stop and then change it. But it seems to work pretty well for me. So we dampen the wheel head a little bit, put our clay down. With my wheel, I don't tend to work with extreme speeds. Try not to go too fast. It makes me feel hectic if the wheel is going too fast, and oftentimes it's kind of hard to control. So we'll open up the bottom, and you can compress it with your thumb. I just use this rib here. These pots aren't delicate. They're not trying to be heavy, but they're not delicate things, so don't leave a delicate bottom. We're pouring hot things in here, and some people use these to bake with. You can bake like a French onion soup in one of these little guys. So we don't need any real thin spots as far as baking and whatnot goes. Putting it in the oven. Sometimes you can run into problems with this little bat system as far as if the base gets warped, things start to wiggle a little bit. Sometimes these things wiggle a little bit. Something to get used to. You just kind of work through it. We'll throw these 15 centimeters wide at the rim, and about 9 centimeters tall. So I think we got most of the height set up there. Do our measurements, see where we're at. So we're at 14 centimeters. And measure this backwards. Let's see, what does this go to? 31. So we want it to hit at about 21. So that's about the right height. Alright, so I'm going to use my wooden knife here. I don't like to cut or trim off too much of the clay on the bottom section here. So I'm going to use my wooden knife, and there's a bevel on here, right? And I'm going to push that bevel side into my pot, supporting from the inside. And that's going to compress the clay into the pot and make the edge that I want, as opposed to just cutting that clay off. Can't see quite how I'm forming that too well. For the edge here, I go all the way down to the bottom and then just curve that rib around. And then flare this rim out. Now we'll just kind of work on our proportions. tend to make these a fairly wide bottom that they sit in your oven. It's nice not to have something too narrow and wobbly in there. Alright, so that should be pretty close. So we're at 15 centimeters wide. Let's see how tall we are. Alright, so it's sitting at 9 centimeters tall. That's what we want. So we got our first one set up. Now we'll put our pointer to here. And I get it probably 1/4 of a centimeter away from the rim or so. And so that's how far I'm going to throw each one to the next point there. Then I'll just take the tip of my wooden knife and go up. And then smooth out that edge right away. You're going to be wrapping your hands around these very possibly. We don't want any sharp burrs on there. I'm not trying to go overly too far into the pot. Otherwise we'll get a thin spot that's more susceptible to thermal shock. Alright, so here's one thing. So I learned when I first started to put your knife or your wire down and pull it towards you. Well, that's kind of hard when I have the pointer here, you know, it's sitting in my way. So I start in front of me and push it away, and then I can just slide that under there. So that's how I cut all of my pots off the wheel now. We have our board sitting over here. Pry that up. And there is our first soup mug. Get that wet. Now we'll just kind of get into a little bit of our production mode here. Get it centered, up and down a few times. This is a stoneware clay. If this was porcelain, I'd probably cone it up and down one more time. For me with porcelain, I find that it likes just a little bit more time to be centered. Stoneware, I can push it around a little bit more and kind of finish centering it kind of while I'm throwing it. Don't let that rim get too delicate. If you hit it with a spoon or something like that, you don't want it to chip. Alright, so I did my first pull. I have a little bit of a skirt down here of clay. You know, it tends to get wider at the bottom. That clay sits down there. So I use my thumb. I kind of drive my thumb across the bottom of the bat with my fingernail and get that pushed up, and that starts my next pull. Get it close to our edge there. Get the bottom. And now we'll put our shape in here. Once again, I do have the mirror sitting in front of me so I can really see the proportions of it without having to stop and bend over too much. I can just look ahead of me and see that I need to belly it out a little bit more. So we just got done doing all the snowmen. Thank you everybody for all your support with the snowmen and all the excitement. It's really wonderful. Hope everybody that got a snowman is enjoying them. Those are very difficult forms to throw. Sometimes it's nice to come back and work on something a little more simple. Put on some nice music. I like to listen to audiobooks. I know a lot of people do podcasts and things. Just kind of get going in a groove. Sometimes I'll just take a little bit of the slip off my hands from throwing and just rub it onto the bat to get it sticky. For me, when I'm throwing, I try not to make a huge mess. Inevitably, there will be a mess. I'm not the type of person to take my hand and toss water on the pot. That's just me. Nothing wrong with either way. If you like having a lake around here, you can even use some of that water. It gets nice and mucky. You can use that for throwing. I've read and gone to workshops, and I think it depends on your clay. So I remember one workshop with a Japanese potter. He doesn't throw with water at all. He only throws with slip. So, you know, watered down clay. If you're their clay, he said, will start to break open if it gets wet with water, so they only use slip. I've been trying to figure out if your clay absorbs water differently, if it's more or less than using fresh clean water as opposed to using just slip for throwing. Like if you're throwing a big form and you don't want it to get waterlogged and you're doing your pulls, is it better to use more of a slip, or is it better to use clean water? I don't know. I know when I have a bucket of clean water, I can tidy up rims and things a little bit better than with slip, because that leaves a lot more residue on there. Hopefully I'll be able to do one more live video next week, and then we'll take 2 or 3 weeks off. I may not be around on Thursdays, might be with family. Over Christmas time, the kids are out of school, and a little more family time. If you all have something you want to see me make, or if you have questions about different forms or different techniques, let me know. I can't see it always too well when I'm doing a live video, but if you leave comments, I'll check them out. And you know, if you want to see tall forms or what have you, that's something that we can work on. Right now, I know we're doing a lot of throwing. At some point, maybe we can talk about glazing or trimming or making handles. We could do a mug one. We can talk about pulling handles. You know, this is the first part of the whole process. There's a lot more to it than just this. I know that glazing can really make or break a piece. There's so many subtleties to it all. Figuring out your designs and then executing it, that's one thing. Getting the right glaze thicknesses and figuring out how glazes interact with each other. Where do they like to be at in the kiln once you finally figure all that out. The handles for these are, there we go. Nothing wrong with extruded handles. Fold handles are nice, but sometimes you can't get the little textures or consistent width on certain pieces that you'd like. You can even make pots with extruders. I don't do too many of those, but it's an interesting tool. Some of these pieces are, you know, they go relatively fast. You'll get in a groove. You kind of hate to stop after 5 of them. So carve out a block of time and make yourself a number of them. Being able to be consistent in making the same piece strengthen your throwing skills, because you're learning to put the clay exactly where you want it. So then when you're interested in making more intricate forms, one-offs and things like that, you'll have the skills to put the clay where you want in your mind's eye. If you don't develop some of these skill sets, I know it seems kind of boring and monotonous to make the same shape over and over, but if you're unable to do that, you most likely won't be able to make what's in your sketchbook. And oftentimes with these things, you'll be working on the same form and you'll find subtleties to it. And then you'll say to yourself, oh, next time, you know, I like how this one turned out a little bit more than the first one, or something like that. And you'll be able to implement those ideas that you wouldn't have found with all these little subtleties that happen when doing runs of pots. Take your time. Do as much cleanup work on the piece as you can right here. It's going to save you buckets of times later. So if you don't do it now, you got to do it later. Well, when the clay is moving and it's wet, it's much easier to get rid of sharp pieces and alter something than when it's leather hard. And it starts to look a little bit overworked after you have to sit there and sponge and scrape. If you wait to do it until it's dry, then you have a whole dusty mess to combat. We'll do this last one. Then maybe we'll make a video of that we can just post, not necessarily a live video. Maybe we'll make a little video of how we finish these. Quick little things so you can see the other steps that kind of go into it. Finishing the bottom, putting the handle on. A lot of that is timing. For drying these out, I'll let them set up about half a day. Then I'm going to put newsprint on the top of the rims. That'll allow the rest of the pot to kind of catch up in the drying without the rim getting too dry for attaching a handle. I like to get the bottoms of these finished before the handle goes on. And if I just let them sit out on their own, the top will be far too dry to attach a handle by the time the bottom catches up. After I finish this last one, I'll show you one thing that I was working on last night. I've never done any Valentine's Day pots. I may give it a shot this year. So I'm thinking of these heart-shaped bowls, wheel thrown in porcelain. So prototypes I made maybe a little bit large, because I was thinking kind of like candy dish, you know, you put chocolates and things in there and whatnot. So the ones I'll show you are a little bit large, but they're more about ideas at this point. I'm making them out of porcelain, so they'll be a little bit more fine, and I was thinking I would do them with a copper red glaze. Let me know if you think I should try maybe a different colored glaze. Oftentimes when I work with porcelain, I'll just do a celadon, which is just like kind of a clear light blue color on there. Let me pick up this. I'll show you. Let me know what you think. We can have a couple of different ideas. All right, let's see what we have. This is generally the idea of the bowl. So porcelain, these are the proportions. Maybe this is a little bit large. It's kind of tall. Altered, kind of a flared rim. But just rather simple but pretty shape. Hopefully not too overdone. Want them to be somewhat elegant. And so we have, so like I was saying, a copper red. So I say copper red. So just like a nice Valentine's Day red glaze. Or I also work in porcelain with some of these nice blues. I don't know if you all would like to see them in blues or just kind of a Valentine's Day red. You know, these are kind of, minus this one, you know, these are just kind of classic, simple, glossy glazes. That's what I've been doing with my porcelain work, really showing off form and line. Maybe I could even do like a green. I don't know if green would work too well. But anyways, if you have any other ideas for different colors for these bowls that you'd like to see, let me know. And we'll hopefully post another video of how we finish the soup mugs. Thanks for joining. Bye.